Welcome to the Wagas Innovation Talks. This podcast offers you an insight into recent innovations in the tech business, driven by research and industry insight. We are talking to researchers and professionals to share their expertise, experience, and projects with us. As a think tank and accelerator, we support tech startups and corporations in growing their business. We believe innovation is key to growth and hope to shine light on academic research and experts with real-life industry experience. To learn more, visit wagas-group.com and find all our podcast episodes, plus articles and resources to expand your horizon on tech innovations. I'm your host, Livia van Herde, and today we had the honor to welcome Harry Ma on our podcast, who has work experience in Southern California as well as the Far East. He is a member of the Far East Regional International Marketing Team at Unisys, formerly known as Burroughs before merging with Sperry. With the Far East region headquarters being in Hong Kong, he has industry experience in China, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Thailand, and Philippines. Subsequently, he managed the Burroughs capacity planning and modeling team, providing services to its global marketing organizations in regions including the Far East, Australia, Europe, Central and South America. He's based in Los Angeles now and acts as a sales consultant to the Wagas team. Welcome, Harry. We are so happy to have you on the podcast.
Yes, thank you very much, Livia.
Well, today we will talk about the Far East market and what companies from Europe can experience when they expand their business. And now I've talked to many startups and SMEs, and one of the reasons why they don't consider entering the Far East market is because the culture seems so different, and that makes business there seem very difficult. Harry, you have experience in both Western markets as well as the markets in the Far East, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so I'd love for you to tell me more about your insight in what the main cultural differences between the Western worlds and the Far East markets are in regards to business expansions. And also, do these differences impact European businesses trying to enter the foreign market?
Yes, I think the major issue is the language, uh, because in China, even though everybody probably learns English now, but I think the language is still the main obstacle to get into business, to get business into the China market, because because of the discrepancy and the interpretation of their culture. The culture between the Western world and the Eastern, the Chinese world, is really not that far apart. Before the Industrial Revolution, I think what happened is, during the Industrial Revolution, starting in the maybe the 18th century onward, that the China, they they closed their doors to the Western ideas and progress, and that entailed them to get humiliated by the Western world when their military power is not strong enough to defend themselves against the Western military industrial complex. So the last 50 years, when they start opening up uh, their their country to the Western world, to the Western ideas, they are able to get into the Industrial Revolution and catch up with the Western world. And that's what happened. If you can see, when China just opened up their door in the early 1980s, they still look like as if they're in the 18th century compared with the Western world. However, with the decades, with the past four decades, they actually catching up. For every decade, since the 1980, they basically catch up a century of the Western world's progress. And they also quantum leap and jump because they do not have to go through what the Western world has done in terms of the evolutionary process. So now in the 21st century, they have built a middle class of over 300 million population, which is larger than the whole population of the United States alone. And they were able to quantum leap different processes. For example, they can go from old locomotive into super trains and so on. So they build thousands and thousands of miles of infrastructures for their railroads, for their highways, for their waterways. So by building up a middle class of around 300 million people in China out of 1.4 billion people, they have a consumer market that is bigger than the United States, and their own internal market has higher demand than their export market nowadays. So it and also their economic growth rate still were able to sustain at around 6% a year. Even though with this pandemic year, I think they will still be able to grow around 3% a year, and that's compared to a lot of Western world which are stagnated at maybe 1% or 2% or less. So it is actually an exciting time for the world to to move their market and their product and their services into the China market. And in order to do that, I think it's important to know that the Chinese, their culture is still Confucius culture. It's a very structured up from top to down structure. Whether it's in their government system or in their business or in their commercial system or in their financial system, basically they their system is still more of a authoritarian situation, not like us in the Western world. We're more individualistic. We are more freedom, and we're more about equality. But in China, the decision could be made very fast if the top decision maker can make their decision. They can basically practice their system all the way from top to down. So yes, so in order to to move into the Chinese market, first of all, obviously is the language, but next it's find the right person when we talk to them. Make sure he or she is the decision maker and they have the budget responsibility. So by able to convince that decision maker, essentially were able to maybe get the contract signed and be able to work with them with the rest of their staff to get our business into the market. However, we have to understand that the people who are on the top, they might be very worldly. They might see the world. They might be very fluent in their English capability. However, if we want to implement whatever project or business partnership with them, we need to ensure that there's nothing will be lost in translation when we deal with the staff of their organization.
Well, my next question would be, what is the traditional knowledge to consider before addressing the Far East market? What do you say?
The traditional knowledge, like I say, is the Chinese. For the thousands of years, they all practice the Confucius Mandarin system in China, and so in their business or in their office environment, they are more Confucius oriented uh, culture. However, China is different from the Western world because the Western world, I believe, are more monolithic religion, all the way from the Hebrew to the Christianity and even the Muslim. They're all monolithic uh, culture. Uh, Even though we the Western world, we have separated the church with the states since the, I guess, the 17th century or onward. However, religion still plays a big part of our culture in the Western world. In China, other than the Confucius philosophy, they also have, in terms of religion or other philosophies that people practice when they're not in the office, are the Buddhism and also the Taoism. So the Taoism is more blended in with the nature, and the Buddhism is more blended in with uh, good deeds and carnation, so reincarnation. So even though in the office environment, in the political or in the official environment, they are they are conformed to the Confucius Mandarin system. However, when they leave the office, their life could be either Taoism, or it could be like I say, or they could be Buddhism in terms of their religious or their personal beliefs.
Right. That is so interesting. And that's definitely something that I suppose a lot of businesses don't think of, um, that come from European countries or the Western world. So, my last question would be, why does managing multiple cultural identities matter?
Well, I believe the world, the Earth is getting so small nowadays. It's just like our team in Wagas. We have people in Australia, in Vienna, in London, in Hong Kong, in China, and I'm in Los Angeles, and Fallon is in Boston area. So that we all have a different culture background when we grow up, but we have to work as a team, and we have to have same objective. Like right now, our objective is be able to bring uh, European companies into the China market, and of course we need to be able to manage all our different cultural background, so we can work seamlessly and together in order to achieve our objectives.
Yeah, beautifully put. Thank you so much for your insight. I've greatly enjoyed hearing your thoughts, and I've learned a lot, as always.
Well, I'm honored and really appreciate the opportunity for this podcast. As you can see, this is my first podcast. So uh, hopefully, I have able to inject any of my experience into this podcast.
You can read more at wagas-group.com. This has been your Innovation Talks podcast produced by Livia van Herde. Make sure to check back next month for the latest insight in innovation.